Numbers chapter 30, verse 1 through chapter 31, verse 54. And Moshe spoke to the heads of the tribes concerning the children of Israel, saying, This is the word which Yahuweh has commanded. When a man vows a vow to Yahuweh, or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he does not break his word. He does according to all that comes out of his mouth. Or if a woman vows a vow to Yahuweh, and binds herself by some agreement while in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow, and the agreement by which she has bound herself, and her father has kept silent towards her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement with which she has bound herself stands. But if her father forbids her on the day that he hears, then none of her vows nor her agreements by which she has bound herself stand. And Yahweh pardons her because her father has forbidden her. But if she at all belongs to a husband, while bound by her vows or by a rash utterance from her lips by which she bound herself, and her husband hears it, and he has kept silent towards her on the day that he hears, then her vows shall stand, and her agreements by which she bound herself do stand. But if her husband forbids her on the day that he hears it, then he has nullified her vow which she vowed, and the rash utterance of her lips by which she bound herself, and Yahweh pardons her. But any vow of a widow or a divorced woman by which she has bound herself stands against her. And if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by an agreement with an oath, and her husband heard it, and has kept silent towards her, and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every agreement by which she bound herself stands. But if her husband clearly nullified them on the day he heard them, then whatever came from her lips concerning her vows or concerning the agreement binding her, it does not stand. Her husband has nullified them, and Yahweh pardons her. Every vow and every binding oath to afflict her being, let her husband confirm it, or let her husband nullify it. But if her husband is altogether silent at her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows or all the agreements that bind her. He confirms them because he kept silent towards her on the day that he heard. But if he nullifies them after he has heard, then he shall bear her crookedness. These are the laws which Yahweh commanded Moshe between a man and his wife, and between a father and his daughter in her youth in her father's house. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Take vengeance for the children of Israel on the Midianites. After that you are to be gathered to your people. And Moshe spoke to the people, saying, Arm some of yourselves for the campaign, and let them go against the Midianites to take vengeance for Yahweh on Midian. Send 1,000 from each tribe of all the tribes of Israel for the campaign. So there were supplied from the tribes of Israel 1,000 from each tribe, 12,000 armed ones for the campaign. And Moshe sent them on the campaign, 1,000 from each tribe, them and Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, on the campaign, with the set-apart utensils and the trumpets for sounding in his hand. And they fought against the Midianites as Yahweh commanded Moshe, and killed all the males. And they killed the sovereigns of Midian with the rest of those who were pierced, Ewi and Rechem, and Sur and Hur and Reba, and the 5 sovereigns of Midian. And they killed Bilam, son of Beor, with the sword. And the sons of Israel took all the women of Midian captive, with their little ones, and took as spoil all their livestock and all their possessions. And they burned with fire all the cities where they dwelt, and all their settlements. And they took all the spoil and all the booty, both of man and beast. And they brought the captives and the booty and the spoil to Moshe, and to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of the children of Israel, to the camp in the desert plains of Moab, by the Yarden of Jericho. And Moshe and Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation, went to meet them outside the camp. But Moshe was wroth with the officers of the army, with the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, who had come from the campaign. And Moshe said to them, Have you kept all the women alive? Look, they are the ones who caused the children of Israel through the word of Balaam to trespass against Yahweh in the matter of Peor. And there was a plague among the congregation of Yahweh. And now kill every male among the little ones, and every woman who has known a man by lying with a man you shall kill. But keep alive for yourselves all the female children who have not known a man by lying with a man. And you camp outside the camp 7 days. Whoever has killed any being, and whoever has touched any slain, cleanse yourselves and your captives on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And cleanse every garment, and every object of leather, and all the work of goat's hair, and every object of wood. And Eleazar the priest said to the men of the campaign who went to the battle, This is the law of the Torah which Yahweh commanded Moshe. Only the gold and the silver, the bronze, the iron, the tin, and the lead, every object that passes through fire, you put through the fire, and it shall be clean. Only let it be cleansed with the water for uncleanness. And whatever does not pass through fire, you pass through water. And you shall wash your garments on the 7th day and be clean. And afterwards come into the camp, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Count up the plunder that was taken, of man and of beast, you and Eleazar the priest, and the heads of the fathers of the congregation. And you shall divide the plunder into 2 parts, between those who took part in the battle, who went out on the campaign, and all the congregation. And set aside a levy for Yahweh on the men of battle who went out on the campaign, 1 out of every 500 of man, and of the cattle, and of the donkeys, and of the sheep. Take it from their half, and give it to Eleazar the priest as a contribution to Yahweh. And from the children of Israel's half, you shall take 1 of every 50 of man, of the cattle, of the donkeys, and of the sheep, of all the livestock, and give them to the Levites guarding the duty of the dwelling place of Yahweh. And Moshe and Eleazar the priest did as Yahweh commanded. And the booty remaining from the plunder, which the people of the campaign had taken, was 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, and 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 human beings in all, of women who had not known a man by lying with a man. And the half, the portion for those who went out on the campaign, was in number 337,500 sheep, and the levy unto Yahweh of the sheep was 675. And the cattle were 36,000, of which the levy unto Yahweh was 72. And the donkeys were 30,500, of which the levy unto Yahweh was 61. And the human beings were 16,000, of which the levy unto Yahweh was 32 beings. So Moshe gave the levy, which was the contribution unto Yahweh, to Eleazar the priest, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And from the children of Israel's half, which Moshe divided from the men who campaigned, now the half belonging to the congregation was 337,500 sheep, and 36,000 cattle, and 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 human beings. Then Moshe took from the children of Israel's half 1 out of every 50 drawn from man and beast, and gave them to the Levites, who guarded the duty of the dwelling place of Yahweh, as Yahweh commanded Moshe. And the officers who were over thousands of the campaign, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, came near to Moshe, and they said to Moshe, Your servants have taken account of the fighting men under our command, and not a man of us is missing. So we have brought an offering for Yahweh, what every man found of ornaments of gold, armlets and bracelets and signet rings and earrings and necklaces, to make atonement for ourselves before Yahweh. And Moshe and Eleazar the priest received the gold from them, all the fashioned ornaments, and all the gold of the offering that they presented to Yahweh, from the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, was 16,750 shekels. The men of the campaign had taken spoil, every man for himself. And Moshe and Eleazar the priest received the gold from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and brought it into the tent of appointment as a remembrance for the children of Israel before Yahweh.